An unscripted showdown, Prince Harry and Jonathan Ross. Royal titles, late-night lights, and clashing egos. What happens when they collide on live television in a fiery, unscripted showdown? Tonight, Jonathan Ross welcomed Prince Harry for what was supposed to be a friendly, amiable sit-down interview. But what began as a routine conversation quickly unraveled into a tense, unpredictable verbal sparring match. As the questions grew sharper and more probing, Harry's answers became colder and more clipped, and the studio audience realized they were watching history being made. This is the compelling, unvarnished story of how a casual chat spiraled into pure, unforgettable chaos. The ITV studio glowed under warm amber lights, casting a soft, theatrical haze over the stage. Jonathan Ross flashed his signature, playful grin, the picture of a charming, seasoned host. The audience clapped politely, a wave of anticipation sweeping through the room as they waited for the night's most talked-about guest. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Prince Harry," Jonathan announced with his usual theatrical flair. From backstage, Harry appeared, walking with a measured, deliberate pace. He was dressed in a dark blazer over a crisp white shirt, his look sharp and modern without a tie. His expression was composed, almost reserved, and his wave to the crowd was minimal, a quick, almost perfunctory gesture. The applause was respectful but restrained, neither a roaring ovation nor a frigid silence. It was the careful sound of a crowd waiting to see what would happen next. Jonathan leaned forward, his hands resting on his desk, his usual charm in full effect. "Harry, welcome back. How are you? How does it feel being back here in London?" Harry adjusted his microphone, his movements precise, and gave a short, almost practiced smile. "I'm fine." The words were clipped and concise, like a door half opened and then quickly shut. Unfazed, Jonathan pressed on, his note cards held loosely in his hands. "It's been a while since we've seen you here in the UK. To be honest, people didn't expect you to set foot here again so soon. What brought you back?" Harry tilted his head slightly, his smile thinning into something sharper, less friendly. "If people didn't expect it, that's their issue, not mine. I'm here for the Well Child Awards. I've supported them for years. They invited me, and I came. Simple as that." A collective murmur went through the audience, a quiet ripple of surprise. They were already sensing the steel underneath his words. Jonathan, still gracious, nodded his head slowly. "It's wonderful work, no doubt, but tell me, does being here stir up any old memories? Familiar faces? Old places?" Harry leaned back, crossing his legs with a calculated, easy air. "I'm not here for a nostalgia tour, Jonathan. I'm here to attend, do my part, and leave. I don't have time to walk the streets, remembering what pub I passed as a teenager." A few sparse chuckles from the audience followed, but they faded fast. Jonathan's smile remained, though thinner and more strained. "Fair enough. Then let's shift to the present. Life in America. How is it treating you?" Harry's eyebrows arched. A grin flickered, cold and humorless. "Better than here, that's for sure. At least I can drink my morning coffee without someone camped outside my window with a lens. Privacy exists, Jonathan. You might try it." "Ooh," the audience rippled, a collective gasp that was half shocked, half entertained. Jonathan reached for levity. "I suppose we've all had neighbors peeking through the curtains, but..." Harry's face didn't crack. The humor landed with a palpable thud. Jonathan quickly pivoted, choosing delicacy. "All right, and let's talk about family. How is married life these days? There have been..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Rumors. And people are curious." Harry fixed him with a cold, unwavering stare. "Rumors feed tabloids. Jonathan, if you came here for gossip, you invited the wrong person. My marriage is fine. That's all you'll get." "Sorry if that disappoints your audience." The audience laughed awkwardly, caught between amusement and building tension. Jonathan dipped his head, maintaining his composure and grace. "It's not about disappointment, just asking what people want to know." "They can read a newspaper then," Harry snapped, his tone still cool but now undeniably cutting. "This isn't free therapy." A hush fell over the studio. Jonathan shuffled his cards, visibly recalibrating his strategy. "All right, then let's talk about your book Spare. Some called it brutally honest. Others thought it lacked depth. Looking back, what do you..." Harry cut in sharply. "Most critics didn't read it. People love to summarize what they don't understand. Sales charts don't measure honesty. People who connected with it don't shout about it. The rest? They'd rather call it a failure than admit it made them uncomfortable. Jonathan raised his brows slightly. Still, as a writer, isn't feedback valuable? Don't you want to know how readers connected or didn't? I did connect, Harry retorted firmly, with those who matter. I don't care about armchair critics. The tension was now palpable. The guitarist in the studio band froze mid-note. Jonathan, his voice like silk over steel, continued. All right then. Let's touch on the royal family, the institution, the duties. What do they mean to you now? Harry let out a sharp, joyless laugh, a sound void of warmth. Honestly, nothing. They don't mean a thing. I breathe on my own schedule now. Gasps rippled through the audience, a wave of genuine shock. Jonathan, still steady and composed, said, That's a strong word. Nothing. But surely there are expectations that... Expectations never end, Harry interrupted, his voice rising slightly. Journalists have them. The public has them. The royals had them. I stopped living under other people's weight. My shoulders carry different things now. Jonathan sighed softly, still smiling for the camera. Fair enough, but just to be clear, this is a conversation show. I ask what people are curious about. And I'm answering, Harry said, his tone frosty. Maybe too honestly. Funny how when I give straight answers, people call it disrespect. The studio fell into a strange, unsettling silence. Jonathan glanced at his producer off stage, then turned back to the camera with poise. We'll take a short break. When we return, more from Prince Harry. As the red light on the camera blinked off, the set didn't relax. The air felt dense and heavy with unspoken words. Every crew member sensed that what started as polite banter had turned into something else entirely. And as the first part of the interview closed, one thing was clear. The easiest questions were behind them. The storm was only just beginning. The break ended. Lights flared back on, brighter now, almost harsh. The applause sign blinked overhead, but this time the clapping from the audience sounded thinner, more cautious, like everyone sensed they were standing too close to a fuse. Jonathan Ross leaned into his chair, forcing his trademark grin, while Harry sat opposite him with the stiff, unbothered air of a man who'd already decided he didn't owe anyone a thing. Welcome back, Jonathan said cheerfully, his voice a little too bright. We're still here with Prince Harry. The audience gave another polite clap. Harry nodded once, a brief movement without a hint of a smile. Jonathan shuffled his cards again, taking a deliberate breath before diving back in. Now, Harry, he began, his tone calm but edged with new resolve. You mentioned earlier that your life in America gives you privacy and a sense of freedom. I think many people here wonder, do you miss anything about life in Britain? Harry smirked, leaning back in his chair. Miss? Not really. I've built a better life, Jonathan. More space, more choice, fewer chains. Why would I miss people who only remember I exist when I'm convenient for headlines? The words were delivered like a blade. A few audience members gasped audibly. Jonathan raised his brows, momentarily taken aback. You don't miss the culture, the places, the familiarity of home? Harry gave a short, bitter laugh. Home is where you're welcome. Britain hasn't exactly rolled out the red carpet, has it? Not unless they need someone to fill a photo op. I'm fine where I am. The audience murmured again, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Jonathan's smile was now fixed in place, but a new sharpness entered his voice. Well, since you've brought up public opinion, you'll understand if I ask. Many here didn't expect you to show up in London at all. In fact, some wondered if you'd even be allowed back through the gates. Harry leaned forward, his tone dripping with disdain. Allowed? I don't need anyone's permission. I came back for the Well Child Awards. I didn't sneak in the back door. If people can't handle seeing me here, that's their problem, not mine. The audience laughed nervously. Jonathan chuckled lightly, trying to smooth things over. Point taken, but your return always sparks chatter, which brings me to, well, your marriage. I know you say it's fine, but the headlines suggest otherwise. Are you and Meghan still as strong as ever? Harry's jaw tightened. His voice was curt, clipped. Do you believe everything you read in the tabloids, Jonathan? If so, maybe I should start making up stories about you. My marriage is fine. That's all anyone needs to know. Anything else is none of your business. Jonathan leaned back, his lips pursed. The audience gave a low, collective, ooh. Harry, I'm not digging for gossip, Jonathan replied evenly. But people are curious, and curiosity feeds the beast, Harry snapped. You want me to hand you a headline and I'm not going to do it? Try another angle, Jonathan. The host exhaled through his nose, visibly working to keep his composure. All right, let's try another angle as you suggest. Your book, Spare, it made waves, certainly. Some say it was brave, others say it was self-indulgent. But it hasn't exactly shattered sales records, has it? Harry crossed his arms, his expression hardening. You know what? Most people didn't understand the book. They skimmed headlines, ignored nuance. That's why they judged it. Sales numbers don't measure truth. If some people were too lazy to read it properly, that's on them. Jonathan tilted his head, but surely as an author you care about how the public received it. Don't you want it to resonate? Harry let out a short, hollow laugh. It resonated with those who matter. The rest? Armchair critics who expect royal gossip dressed up as literature. They missed the point. I don't lose sleep over people who can't keep up. The audience murmured louder now. Some looked unsettled, sensing the hostility, while others leaned forward eagerly, savoring the rising storm. Jonathan pressed on, his patience visibly thinning. So you don't care about public reaction? Or is it easier to dismiss criticism than address it? Harry's eyes narrowed. I care about what's real. Criticism based on ignorance isn't real. You can spin it however you like, but I know what I wrote, and I know why. The tension in the studio was thick. Jonathan shuffled his cards once more, though it was clear he didn't need them. His voice was firmer now, a clear shift from entertainer to interrogator. All right, let's go to the heart of it. The royal family. You've said before that the institution doesn't matter to you anymore, but you know people here feel you've benefited enormously from it. Title, platform, privilege. How do you respond to those who say you can't have it both ways? Harry scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. I didn't choose to be born into it. I never asked for it. If I benefit from surviving that environment, so be it. At least I had the courage to walk away, instead of pretending everything was fine. Jonathan's voice dropped an octave. But isn't it fair to say that even as you claim independence, you still use the royal connection to stay relevant? People don't call you Harry Mountbatten Windsor. They call you Prince Harry. Isn't that what sells the books, the interviews, the documentaries? Harry's smirk returned, sharper now. If people can't separate my work from a title, that's their laziness, not mine. I didn't ask to be branded, but I won't apologize for using what I was born with. The audience shifted noisily now, sensing they were watching something combustible, something truly volatile. Jonathan straightened, his composure finally cracking at the edges. Harry, you keep dismissing every question as if it's beneath you. But this isn't Buckingham Palace. This is a talk show. You agreed to be here. Harry leaned forward, his voice low and cutting. And I'm answering, Jonathan. Just because you don't like the answers doesn't make them invalid. The two men locked eyes across the studio, the air thick with challenge. The audience fell utterly silent, waiting to see who would break first. Jonathan smiled, but it was the kind of smile edged with fire. All right, but understand this. Your arrogance doesn't play well here. You're not in control of this room. We'll continue, but only if you can manage to answer without sneering at everyone watching. Harry leaned back, crossing his arms again. His expression said everything. He wasn't about to change. The applause sign blinked on, but nobody clapped. The tension was too sharp, too raw. The studio was silent, almost reverent, as if the audience realized they were no longer watching entertainment, but something raw, unfiltered, and unplanned. Jonathan Ross leaned forward on his desk, fingers steepled, his usually playful eyes fixed with an intensity that made it clear he had dropped the host persona. Across from him, Harry lounged back in his chair, arms folded, jaw set, an expression that screamed disdain. Jonathan broke the silence first, his voice calm but edged with steel. Harry, let me level with you. You've been on this stage for nearly half an hour, and every question I've asked you, questions people genuinely want answers to, you've brushed off with sneers and superiority. Don't you think you owe the public a little respect? Harry tilted his head, smirking faintly. Respect? Respect has to go both ways. Where was the respect when I was hounded day and night in this country? Where was the respect when my wife was torn apart in the press for simply existing? Forgive me if I don't bow and scrape for an audience that treated me like a circus act. The audience shifted uncomfortably. A few gasps, some uneasy laughter. Jonathan didn't flinch. That may all be true, Jonathan replied steadily. But let's not pretend you didn't profit from that very circus. Book deals, streaming contracts, magazine covers. Your story sells because of the crown you claim to despise. You call yourself free, but you've cashed in every single reminder that you were once a prince. Harry leaned forward now, his voice sharp and aggressive. And what do you suggest, Jonathan? That I crawl back and pretend nothing happened? That I bury the truth because it's inconvenient for the monarchy? I'm damned if I speak, damned if I don't. At least I chose honesty. Jonathan's lips tightened. He shuffled his cards, then let them drop flat onto the desk. Honesty is one thing. Arrogance is another. And tonight, Harry, you're not coming across as honest. You're coming across as entitled. The audience let out a low, collective murmur. Harry's smirk vanished. His eyes narrowed. Entitled? Harry's voice rose, his tone now openly hostile. You think I'm entitled? I walked away from palaces and privileges most people can't imagine. I gave that up for freedom, for my family. Don't you dare lecture me about entitlement. Jonathan leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. You didn't give it up, Harry. You repackaged it. You left the palace, yes, but you brought the crown with you everywhere you went. You wrote about it. You filmed it. You monetized it. The title, Prince Harry, still sells your story. You never actually left it behind. The words landed like punches. Harry's posture stiffened, his hands clenching on the armrests of his chair. You have no idea what it was like for me, Harry shot back. You sit there in your chair in your safe little studio and you think you can judge me. You don't know what it's like to wake up every morning to cameras outside your window, to live with the weight of 1,000 lies printed about you daily. Jonathan's voice sharpened. You're right. I don't know, but I do know what people see now. They see a man who complains about attention while booking primetime interviews. A man who preaches about privacy while signing deals, to spill every private detail. You say you wanted freedom, but it looks like you just wanted a different stage. The audience erupted in nervous applause. Some clapped out of support for Jonathan, others simply because the tension was unbearable. Harry's face reddened with fury. This is pathetic, Harry muttered, shaking his head. I came here to talk, not to be accused of hypocrisy. Jonathan leaned forward, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. No, Harry, you came here to remind people you're still relevant, and you've done it the only way you seem to know how, by sneering, by dismissing, by acting as though every question is beneath you. But here's the truth. You're not above anyone in this room. Not anymore. The air in the studio thickened. Harry sat back, his eyes blazing. Careful, Jonathan. You're treading into dangerous territory. Jonathan didn't blink. Oh, I'm well aware. But let's cut to it. You're not a prince anymore. Not here, not anywhere. You walked away from the role, from the duty, from the respect it carried. And yet you cling to the name. Because without it, who are you? Just another man in California, with a podcast and a mortgage. The words sliced the room in half. Gasps, whispers, even a few cheers. Harry's lips parted as if to respond, but no words came. His face contorted with fury, then disbelief. Jonathan pressed on, his voice growing firmer. You act like Britain betrayed you, like the monarchy crushed you. But the truth is, Harry, you've built an entire second career out of that betrayal. You've made millions, selling the story of your suffering. And yet here you sit, mocking questions, sneering at people, acting as though the world still owes you something. The sad part is, Harry, the only reason anyone still listens is because of the family you claim to despise. The audience broke into full applause this time, sharp and sustained. Jonathan sat back, finally letting the words hang in the air. Harry's hands trembled slightly on the armrests, his jaw set, his chest rising and falling with fury. Jonathan softened his tone, though his words were no less cutting. This isn't Buckingham Palace, Harry. It's a television studio, and if you can't handle being spoken to like everyone else, then maybe you shouldn't be here at all. For the first time all night, Harry had no immediate retort. His lips were pressed together, his face flushed, his breathing audible. The audience stared, transfixed, as the once proud prince sat speechless under the weight of Jonathan Ross's words. The camera zoomed in, capturing every second of the silence. It was the kind of silence that comes before something breaks. The silence after Jonathan's last words lingered like smoke, heavy and suffocating. The audience didn't dare shift in their seats. All eyes were locked on Harry, waiting to see if he'd finally fire back or fold. The once confident prince sat rigid, his hands gripping the arms of the chair so tightly that his knuckles had gone white. Jonathan Ross, still composed, leaned forward slightly. His voice was measured, but laced with the authority of someone who had decided the gloves were off. "Harry, the truth is, you can't have it both ways. You can't leave the monarchy and still expect the privileges that came with it. You can't sell books about your private life and then demand privacy. And you certainly can't sit here sneering at questions as if you're still untouchable. You're not untouchable anymore." The words struck deep. Harry's chest rose and fell in rapid breaths. His jaw tightened until it looked like his teeth might shatter under the pressure. Finally, he stood. The audience gasped at the suddenness of his movement, the chair skidding back across the polished floor. Harry's voice, when it came, was sharp, clipped, and shaking with a mixture of fury and humiliation. "You think you know me, Jonathan? You don't. You sit there pretending to be some truth-teller, but all you're doing is parroting the same garbage tabloids have thrown at me for years. I don't need to prove myself to you or to anyone in this country anymore." Jonathan stayed seated, calm and unflinching. "No, Harry, you don't need to prove yourself, but when you step into this chair on my stage in front of this audience, you owe them honesty. You owe them respect. And tonight, you've shown them nothing but contempt." The studio erupted into murmurs. Some in the crowd clapped, others just watched, eyes wide with shock. Harry's face flushed a deeper red. "You've had your fun," he snapped. "But I'm not going to sit here and be lectured by a late-night host who has no idea what it's like to live my life." Jonathan's reply was instant, a final, decisive strike. "And maybe that's the problem, Harry. Maybe the whole world is tired of hearing about your life when you've done nothing but squander every chance to use it for something greater than yourself. You say you escaped the crown, but really you've been hiding behind it all along." The audience broke into applause, loud and relentless. The sound filled the studio like a wave. Harry's eyes darted across the crowd as though betrayed by the very people who had once cheered for him. His lips trembled, but no words came. Instead, he yanked off his microphone and slammed it onto the chair he had just vacated. "This is over," he spat. "I don't need this circus." And with that, Prince Harry turned and strode off stage, his footsteps echoing against the studio floor. The cameras swiveled to catch the moment, the rigid shoulders, the clenched fists, the unmistakable fury of a man who had lost control of his own narrative. Jonathan sat back, exhaling slowly. For a long beat, the applause and gasps carried on without him saying a word. Finally, he leaned toward the camera, his tone calm but resolute. "Well," he said, his voice cutting through the noise, "I suppose that's where we'll leave it tonight. Sometimes conversations don't go the way you expect, but that's the risk of honesty. And here on this stage, that's what we owe you. The truth, no matter how uncomfortable it gets." The audience clapped again, this time for Jonathan. Some even stood. The energy in the room was electric, unforgettable. As the credits rolled, one thing was certain. Viewers had just witnessed not a late-night interview, but a cultural moment, one that would dominate headlines, social media feeds, and dinner-table conversations for weeks to come. Prince Harry had come to the Jonathan Ross Show to speak on his own terms. He had left in silence, his pride bruised and his image shaken. And Jonathan Ross, calm and unwavering, had cemented his place as the host who dared to say what many had long been thinking.